On the surface, this is Chicago, 2.7 million people, America's third largest city, world-class architecture, deep dish pizza, the Cubs. But when we overlay the flow of money through underground economies, we see something very different. Three distinct territorial empires, over 100,000 people operating in parallel economic structures. Billions of dollars moving through networks that don't appear on any official map. Today, we're analyzing Chicago's gang territory using data from law enforcement reports, territorial maps, and economic flow analysis. This is the 2026 Intelligence Breakdown. Welcome to Street Economics. Chicago's gang landscape isn't random, it's economic geography. Let's start with the foundation. Territory equals market control. When we map gang presence across Chicago's 77 community areas, three major power structures emerge. Red zones, primarily Bloods and Black P-Stones, control. These organizations dominate the South Side, particularly in Inglewood, Washington Park, and Woodlawn. Blue zones, Gangster Disciples and the Folk Nation Alliance. They control massive swaths of the South Side and significant portions of the West Side, including Roseland, Auburn Gresham, and parts of Austin. Gold zones, Latin Kings and other Latino organizations. They maintain strongholds on the southwest and northwest sides, particularly in Little Village, Humboldt Park, and Logan Square. The white lines cutting through these zones, these are contested borders, active conflict zones where territory is disputed and violence spikes. Each colored zone represents billions in annual drug revenue. This isn't just about pride or respect, it's about market share. A single block can generate $50,000 to $100,000 per week in drug sales. Control 10 blocks? That's $1 million a week. Control a neighborhood? That's an economic empire. Now let's examine how these organizations actually function. These aren't chaotic street groups. They operate like corporations with clear hierarchies and defined roles. Take the Gangster Disciples, Chicago's largest gang with an estimated 30,000 to 50,000 members citywide. At the top, a board of directors. Even with founder Larry Hoover serving multiple life sentences in ADX Florence Supermax prison, the leadership structure he created in the 1960s remains intact. Second tier, regional coordinators. These individuals oversee specific geographic territories, Southside operations, Westside operations, suburban expansion. They report to the board and coordinate major decisions. Third tier, enforcers. These are the shot callers who manage daily operations in specific neighborhoods. They control multiple sets, resolve disputes, coordinate drug supplies, and order violence when necessary. Fourth tier, street soldiers. These are the visible members, the ones selling drugs on corners, holding territory, putting in work. They range from teenagers to men in their 40s. Here's how the money flows. A street soldier might make $100 to $500 per week. He kicks up to his enforcer. The enforcer keeps 20 to 30% and passes the rest up to the regional coordinator. The coordinator does the same, passing up to the board. By the time money reaches the top, we're talking hundreds of thousands per week flowing to leadership. Orders flow down, money flows up. It's a corporate structure designed for one purpose: profit extraction from underground markets. The vice lords follow a similar model on the west side. So do the Black P-Stones on the south side. So do the Latin Kings in their territories. These organizations learned decades ago that chaos doesn't generate sustainable revenue. Structure does. Let's talk numbers. Conservative estimates put the combined annual revenue of Chicago's gang economy at $2 to $3 billion. To put that in perspective, that's roughly equal to the annual revenue of companies like Blue Apron or Groupon, except it's entirely underground. Here's how that revenue breaks down. Drug sales, 70% of total revenue. We're primarily talking about fentanyl, heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamine. The opioid epidemic alone generates over $1 billion annually in Chicago's underground market. Extortion and protection, 15% of revenue. This includes protection rackets targeting legitimate businesses, illegal gambling operations, and sex trafficking networks. Weapons trafficking, 10% of revenue. Chicago's gang organizations serve as distribution networks for firearms, many of which come from states with looser gun laws and are resold in Chicago at 200 to 300% markup. Other operations, 5% of revenue. This includes everything from stolen car parts to counterfeit goods. But here's what's crucial to understand. This money doesn't stay in these neighborhoods. It flows through car washes, barbershops, restaurants, and other cash-intensive businesses used for money laundering. It flows to luxury goods, jewelry, cars, designer clothes. It flows out of state to suppliers and international cartels. And a portion flows back into the neighborhoods through community programs and support networks, which is how these organizations maintain local loyalty despite the violence. The underground economy operates as a parallel system to the legitimate economy. They intersect constantly, but remain distinct. Remember those white borderlines on our territorial map? Let's zoom in. These aren't just theoretical boundaries, they're active battlegrounds. Inglewood, one of Chicago's most violent neighborhoods. It sits at the intersection of Gangster Disciples and Black Disciples territory. Both organizations claim historical ties to these blocks. The result? Constant violence as sets from each side attempt to push boundaries or retaliate for previous attacks. In 2025, Inglewood saw over 200 shootings. Many were directly tied to territorial disputes over drug corners. Austin, the West Side's largest neighborhood. Latin kings are pushing eastward from their traditional strongholds, encroaching on vice lord territory. The vice lords have held Austin for decades and aren't giving ground easily. What looks like random gang violence in the news is actually economic warfare. Each shooting, each retaliation, each death is connected to market control. South Shore, Black Pea Stones expanding northward, creating tension with Gangster Disciples sets. The Pea Stones are one of Chicago's most violent organizations, and their expansion strategy is aggressive. Here's what the data shows. When territorial boundaries shift on the map, violence spikes in those areas within 30 days. When boundaries stabilize, violence decreases. This isn't chaos, it's economic competition enforced through violence. Law enforcement isn't sitting idle. The Chicago Police Department's Gang Intelligence Unit uses this exact type of territorial mapping. They know who controls which blocks. They track leadership changes. They monitor conflicts. Federal task forces, FBI, DEA, ATF, coordinate with CPD to target organizational leadership. The strategy is called decapitation. Remove the head, disrupt the organization. In 2025 alone, over 500 gang-related arrests were made at the enforcer level or higher. Dozens of federal indictments targeted leadership structures. Multiple RICO cases dismantled entire sets. But here's the challenge law enforcement faces. When you arrest a regional coordinator, someone steps up within weeks. When you take down a shot caller, 3 people compete to replace him. The economic incentive is too strong. When a single neighborhood can generate millions annually, there will always be someone willing to take the risk for that position. If you look at territorial maps from 2020, 2023, and 2026, you'll notice something striking. Despite heavy enforcement, the borders haven't changed dramatically. The Gangster Disciples still control largely the same areas. So do the vice lords. So do the Latin kings. The structure is resilient. Individual members are replaceable. This is why law enforcement increasingly focuses on long-term strategies, community investment, economic development, education programs. The theory is that reducing the economic desperation that feeds recruitment will have more impact than arrests alone. This is Chicago's parallel economy, $3 billion in annual revenue, 100,000 participants across 600-plus organizations. corporate structures that rival legitimate businesses. But underneath these colored zones on our map are real neighborhoods, real people, real consequences. Life expectancy in Inglewood, one of those red zones we examined, is 60 years. Just 10 miles north in the Gold Coast, it's 90 years. That's a 30-year life expectancy gap within a single city. The homicide rate in gang territories is 20 times higher than Chicago's overall average. Children in these neighborhoods develop PTSD at rates comparable to war zones. This isn't a game, it's not entertainment, it's an economic reality affecting 2.7 million people. These structures exist because they fill economic voids. Where legitimate opportunities are scarce, underground economies emerge. And once established, they're extraordinarily difficult to dismantle. If you found this analysis valuable, subscribe. This is Street Economics, understanding the numbers behind the streets.